Hello, everybody. Welcome to the October workshop in the Consciousness Collective portal. My name's Hollis Bailey. I'm a transformation facilitator and a coach and a plant medicine educator. And I am the teacher in this portal. We have a couple other people who come in. Jessica is a live channeler, which is going to be a huge part of the conversation today because this month's topic is awakening the channeler within. So just to bring us into the present moment, I'm going to start with a little bit of sound healing and then get into the teaching. This is the workshop portion. This is the first thing you should listen to every month, and then go on to the meditation and then attend as many lives as you can. This month we have Jessica doing her live channeling session, and I will also be doing a live breathwork session. Everything is recorded, so you can always come back to the recordings. And let's get started with a little bit of sound healing. Just close your eyes, please. Begin to tune into your body. Begin to tune into your surroundings. If you're having any sensations, allow them to be. Continuing to breathe and receive and allow. Opening this space with love, connecting our hearts with the star crystal up above, the heart of the sky, all the way down to the earth star, the crystal in the very center of the earth. I open the space for you and for us today so that you may receive all of the messages and information that are relevant to you. What's not relevant, you can leave at the door. Take with you what resonates. Practice it this month. Opening your channeling abilities, getting to know them, getting familiar with who you are as a human being and how it relates to the rest of humanity, the planet, to other dimensions, and to the entirety of source energy of consciousness. So once again, welcome. Welcome to this workshop. This is going to be a teaching on awakening the channeler within. And I just find it incredibly exciting that we're entering the last 3 months of the year. This year has flown by, and that we're entering these last 3 months with some pretty advanced topics, really. This month, we're going to explore a topic that everyone, I believe, who's on any kind of a spiritual path, and even those who aren't, will surely be intrigued by, because honestly, it's the #1 tool that we can use to help us remember who we really are and tap into the greater consciousness. So awakening the channeler within is also, for me, it's just so much fun. It brings joy to my life, and wherever you are in your life, it's a topic, it's a practice really, that is surely going to help you feel more connected and in alignment with your soul and your purpose. So the more you tap into this, the more You're going to be able to get answers when you need answers, and you'll be able to get over the overwhelm and the stuckness. So what I'm going to do in this workshop is I'm going to explain kind of in depth what channeling is and how it works and what different kind of channeling might look like for different people. And really for me, channeling is a way to raise your vibration, manifest more of the things in your life, feel really connected to not only yourself and others, and like I said, to get answers. Not that we need to search for answers all the time. That's why I said most of us are channeling a lot more than we know it. But you know, our human mind, it's a tool, but it's not everything. So this is something channeling can really bring to our lives, is to tap into the infinite consciousness of possibilities and start to extrapolate out more creative answers and creative ways of being. I'm also going to be explaining why our imagination and our ability to really trust ourselves and this process is required if you're going to be a good channeler. So it's part of the process, and it's imagination and self-trust are things that we will all begin to gain as we do the inner work and are on this spiritual path. And then the last thing I'm going to do this month is give you practical tools so that you can then go and practice and strengthen these abilities within yourself. And the practical tools are really going to come in from the meditation and in the reading, in the text and the content under this video. So take notes during this workshop. If anything stands out, absolutely, go back to it and contemplate it and just let it sink in. So what doesn't resonate, leave it, fine. But what does resonate, really take time to contemplate some of those things, because that gives you a chance to integrate into your body the important points to you. So I'm going to start by taking a drink of water. I'm going to start with the definition of channeling and break it down and go over it in a few ways so that it can really sink in. And you may have your own definition of channeling. But this is one I got from a book called The Science of Channeling. And it says channeling is the process of revealing information and energy not limited by our conventional notions of space and time. So let's break that down a little bit. It's a pretty simple and concise definition, but it's so big in its actual meaning. So first I want you to contemplate in this moment, what do energy and information mean? What is information? What does that mean? What's energy? Where does that come from? What is it? So just take a minute to kind of let that sit in and start to allow your mind and your body to come up with answers to that. And some of you may have come up with this, but energy and information in this context is really everything. We use this human language to try to describe things, but this is big. Energy is literally everything. It's everything that we are. Everything is energy. So channeling is essentially a term that we use to define how we receive access to anything and everything in the universe. So the information that's in other dimensions, for example, the information that's in our body in regards to how to heal, for example, information on what business decision to make next, right? So energy and information is everything, and channeling gives us access to all of that. So now I want you to think about what not limited by our conventional notions of space and time means. So what does that actually mean if we're tapping into this energy that's not limited by our conventional notions of space and time? So when I sat down to contemplate this, I came up with a whole list of things, but I'm just going to give you my kind of top 3 or 4 here, because it really could be interpreted, again, in so many ways. And the few that I came up with is that it's not limited to our own conditioning, for example. So we can access information that may not be in our realm of society and structure and, just limited beliefs in general. Another one I came up with is it's not limited to our five senses. So energy and information that is outside the realms of just what we're perceiving immediately with our bodies through our eyesight, our smell, our taste, our sense of touch, and our sense of hearing. Another one I came up with is it's not limited to the third dimensional way of perception. So it's not limited to, the density and what we see directly in front of us on this planet. So we could really go on, but I think I've made a good enough point here to help you start to wrap your head around where I'm going with this. And I'm going to rephrase channeling using these new definitions so that you can see how big this really is and what an incredible tool it is to have in your toolbox. So channeling, using our new definitions of the words information and energy and not limited, channeling is the process of revealing anything and everything that is not limited by our own conditioning, the third dimension, your five basic senses, on and on. So essentially channeling, given that its actual definition is that it gives us access to everything in the universe, is an essential tool on the path of awakening. And it's how we draw on new ideas and how we create new identities and how we create new realities. And it's the act of tapping into the infinite consciousness and actually receiving those messages that aren't seen and heard and felt by everyone else in the room. So we're all channeling in our own unique way. And how you channel is very unique to you. And I want to make it really clear to begin with that we all have the ability to channel. It's not limited to just the people who are doing it, for other people. And it's not limited to anyone. Everyone can channel. And we're likely doing it a lot more often than we think we are. So, it may not be your soul's mission to be a channel like our intuitive channel, our community intuitive channel Jessica is, who she's able to translate that information and energy for not only herself, but others. So you might not be that person. However, it's important to know that we all do have the connection to where that information and energy is coming from. So being on the path of awakening or self-improvement or healing and having the desire to consciously evolve and grow, I think channeling is a huge part of this process. Because in order to grow and heal and evolve and create new realities for ourselves, we've got to access information that is outside of our realm of limited thinking, outside of our senses. So we've got to tap into the greater consciousness. Just quickly, something just came to me. Just quickly on the topic of Jessica's sessions and even listening to channelers online, if you listen to different ones, I want to share a little wisdom nugget here in regards to how to go into these sessions and being in the presence of a channeler or listening to some downloaded channel, because it's really an energy transmission. So this is something you can do moving forward. And maybe you've already noticed this for yourself, but being in Jessica's presence and even listening to, her recordings can actually be a really good practice for you being exposed to her opening up and using her own channeling abilities. When you're exposed to them, it gives you insight into what your own unique channeling abilities are as well. So it's because when you're exposed to someone who's more advanced, basically, than you in their channeling abilities, you can actually tap into their energy field and what they're doing and begin to observe your own channeling abilities. And this comes in, observing what kind of sensations you're getting, what kind of thoughts are coming in that perhaps are unrelated or even deeper than her words. So I just want to offer this moving forward. Especially this month, you can practice it is that by getting really present and in tune with your body and your energetic field and witnessing how you are receiving Jessica's messages when she's channeling, that's going to give you good insight into what is already strengthened within you, what might want to wake up, and just kind of how you're doing this channeling on your own. Because in Jessica's session, it's not just words that are being spoken, it's an energy transmission. And energy, because it's everything, isn't interpreted in just one single way. So even though we're hearing the words, we're often going to have experiences or sensations or downloads or different messages other than what she says. And so you might just, listen to her kind of as if you were, being very present in your body, but not focusing so much on the exact words, and just see what other kinds of information and energy starts to come into your being. So I thought that was, that just came in, and I thought that was important to share, because I've definitely noticed that with Jessica, with other channelers that I've listened to, that it really helps excite and enliven and awaken my own channeling abilities so that I can really get in tune with how I receive information. It's your own intuitive signaling system that's going to be more turned on when you're in your full present moment, and when you have the intention to listen with more senses than just your hearing, for example. So just try that moving forward this month and in life. The whole phenomenon of getting in touch with how you are receiving messages, whether it's through feelings, whether it's through sensations, whether it's through visions, this is kind of the first step in awakening the channeler within. We're opening ourselves and becoming available to receiving from the field of consciousness. So that's the first step. And we've got to learn how to recognize our own system and how it works. And then the second part of this awakening the channeler within then becomes about interpreting the information based on all of the ways in which you receive it. So you'll want to begin by flexing the listening muscles first before getting hung up on, trying to figure out exactly what all the messages mean. Because usually you're going to be receiving a lot of messages. It's not just going to be like, here's your answer to this. It's going to be a whole array of messages, and then it's up to you to interpret that and decide on the meaning you take from that. And I guarantee that Jessica has had to do plenty of practicing on her own skills, and also a lot of inner work to strengthen and developing those abilities that she has and shows us, where she's able to receive from the energy field and then translate it to us in the way that she does. It's not just like it's coming in as a screenplay and she's reading a script. She's receiving energy in so many different ways. So I like the way Esther Hicks puts it, being tapped in, tuned in, and turned on. This is really what we need to be doing to be able to receive and do this personal channeling, to get the clear messages up anyway. It's a fun process. This is the fun part, when you can instantly start to tap into the greater consciousness, however whatever feels right to you, however you've projected that, calling it your higher self, your angels, your guides, plants, animals, whatever, loved ones who've passed on. That's the fun part, is when you can tap into that and ask questions and get guidance, especially on the important questions, especially when we go through times that are really challenging or when we need to make really big decisions. So at this point, I'm going to share a little bit about my own personal interpretations of the different types of channeling, again, to give you more context. This is what I've witnessed, so it might not be the whole gamut of what is out there. But I do believe that we all have these abilities, and the foundation that I'm going to teach you today in terms of intuition is kind of the foundation of all of these. But again, not everyone came to planet Earth with the sole mission to use channeling. It's such an individual process, and there's really no right or wrong. Another very important point I want to make is there's no right or wrong. In the case of this community, because we're all on the spiritual path, we're all asking these questions already. We're already doing things to improve ourselves consciously, and a lot of us are working with other peoples as well to help them improve their lives. I do believe that it's probably a part of our soul's purpose to tap into this and to do some practice around it. So it's when you turn your attention more towards your intuition and awakening the channeler within is when you're going to see more flow in your life. Things are going to manifest quicker. It's going to feel more fun, and it's going to feel more aligned. So intuition. You can imagine that intuition and channeling is like just one aspect of your organism that you can get access to. But you could also survive without it. And so there's probably plenty of people out there that don't even care about this. They don't need to use it, and that's totally fine. But one of the things that starts to happen naturally when people do start exploring themselves, or when they start exploring spirituality, or flirting with the idea of waking up, trying to use all the terms that I share in this process of consciousness evolution. But one of the first things that happens when we turn this system back on is that the questions come up, the need, the desire to start tapping into the greater consciousness comes back up, and that's really what channeling is. It's like it kind of excites our organism again. If you think of intuition as being a part of our organism, it excites our organism again. And in the observations of the wide variety of how people channel, I see channeling as being experienced on a spectrum, really, from having experiences like intuition, gut feelings, things like that, all the way up to being able to tap into the field of higher frequencies and channel things like art and music and poetry, business ideas, or even just the next steps to manifest that house or the partner that you've been working on attracting, right? And then it goes maybe a little bit deeper to having deeply developed gifts like telepathy and clairvoyance and so forth. There is one more different type that I want to touch on, because I actually believe that this is where we all actually have access to this. This is more in terms of the quantum field, and that's trance channeling. So I think there's fewer people doing it and practicing it as like a profession. However, if you've ever been under hypnosis, if you've ever put someone under hypnosis, if you've ever been in a plant medicine ceremony, or you've kind of felt, or if you've ever just had like an astral travel or an out-of-body experience, it's similar to trance channeling in that you can really be in the matrix, be in the experience of that greater consciousness. And if you can begin to learn how to work with that using what you have available here, while also tapping in a very surrendered, very fully, very almost immersed way, surrendered way into the quantum field, you can really start to pull in a lot of information using things like your mind and your body. And so I wanted to also just say that that's kind of at the far end. There's far fewer trance channelers and out-of-body channelers. However, I actually believe that's a tool that we can all really begin to do in deep meditations. Joe Dispenza, he talks about these kinds of he does these kinds of meditations, hypnosis, plant medicine ceremonies. So those are more of the deeper, getting a sense of what everything and a knowing of what everything is, not necessarily being able to bring it back in and integrate it all the way into every cell of your body, but at least getting a chance to visit the possibilities. And then that really starts to change your awareness and change those limiting beliefs and traumas and things like that. So those are kind of different levels of channeling that I've observed. Like I said, there's probably many more we could talk about, but in this workshop, I'm going to just elaborate on intuition and how to really strengthen your intuitive abilities, because I see this as being something that we shouldn't overlook, that we should actually put a lot of focus on. It's like the foundation of intuition. So the more you develop your intuitive skills, the better your channeling is going to get, the more, the more complex it will get. You'll be able to start to take in a lot more information in a lot of different ways and interpret that a lot quicker. So we've all experienced intuition, and we have all probably had experiences where we chose not to listen to our intuition as well, which is kind of the thing that points intuition out. So personally, I don't believe that there's a wrong move or any mistake. So I'm just using this as an example to help you understand. But when you don't listen to a message and then you have a reflection of, I really wish that I would have listened to that gut feeling, based on the consequence that happened. In this type of situation, it's actually a knock on the door from your channeling abilities, asking you just to tune in more. So this is a great example too, metaphor of what duality is. It's a gift. It's a gift to make mistakes, where really they're not mistakes. They're messages from the divine to help us, point us in the direction of the things that are going to really help strengthen our lives and our gifts and lead us forward. Let me catch myself up on my notes and see where we're going next. So if you really want to own that connection with your higher self and God, your spirit guides, etc., you're going to have to put in the time and effort to strengthen these muscles. So it's probably fair to say that you do have a lot of interest and questions about your higher purpose. And we talk about purpose a lot. There's a lot of different definitions of that. I'm just using that because I think it's a really common question that we all have. But this is a great way to get in touch with your higher purpose or your soul's mission. And it's how you can learn to communicate with your guides, for example, your angels. And if you have a story of being unsafe, it's how you can bring more safety into your life and how you can kind of heal the root of that wound or trauma. So let's take a little more of a deeper look at intuition, which, like I said, is a form of channeling. So again, intuition, just like anything else, it's experienced very differently because our consciousness tends to interpret messages differently. We all have a very unique blueprint of our consciousness. Intuition tends to require a whole body thinking, if you will. So every person's going to need to translate and become familiar with their own unique intuition. Just for example, for reference, I'm someone who often gets a feeling first, like an actual feeling, or a sensation in my body. So that's kind of my first signaling. It comes in a lot of different ways too, but I tend to really get some kind of an emotion almost. More specifically, I almost get a feeling that will cause a sensation or movement in my gut area. So I'll consciously or unconsciously, now that I'm conscious of it, I see it happening all the time, but I will get literally like a tightening or some kind of movement. And I've been doing the practices that I'm going to share with you a lot this year. And it's helped amplify my own channeling abilities. And now I'm getting a lot more sensation and feelings and emotion able to go through my heart in the front and the back. I feel a lot of movement sometimes here, like little twitches and things like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, something's trying to come in. And I also have a lot of sensations or definitely visions, very visionary if you're a visionary person. So I don't necessarily feel as much here, but I do. I sense it. I sense that it's coming, and I sense it's time to get still and close my eyes. And often at that point, if I bring conscious intention here, then I'll start to see some of the information coming in. So that's just to give you a little bit of an idea of how this can work. When you get sensation, I'll talk for my example, and you can translate it for your own self. But when I get a sensation, I have to allow that information that's in the feeling or that's in the sensation to be translated. And it's really translated by my brain oftentimes. So this is where our mind comes in, so that it has a message and then it has meaning. So sometimes it happens in an instant. You guys, we're doing this a lot more often than we know. But sometimes it really takes sitting with it, contemplating it, letting it come in over the matter of a few minutes or hours or days. And I'm going to explain to you in just a minute why doing the inner work on ourselves is sometimes required before we can really develop this skill and continue to awaken and develop the channeler within. So I'm going to explain why and how that works in just a moment. But for me personally, I had to do a lot of inner work before I could start to translate these messages and get more clear on my channeling. But before I get into the inner work, I want to give another example, just like a couple other examples to help you get an idea of how this works and to start it. Hopefully this will start to sink in for you, right? For you in your own personal ways of interpreting and channeling. So, okay, here's another one. So another case might be in the case of a thinker or a really visual person. Those might be your first cues. You might get a lot of thoughts coming in, right? Like if you're in the presence of someone, you kind of start to read their mind or have thoughts for them or be able to finish their sentences. Or if you're really visual, you might start to see, colors, or your vision might get distorted, or you might be able to close your eyes and start to get a picture. Or things might just come into your head, like somebody's talking to you and all of a sudden you're like, I just thought of a cat. And, so you can start to, and that person in front of you might say, I was just going to tell you about my cat. So that's kind of how information might start coming in. So start noticing those and then anchoring them into your consciousness and your awareness. Like, oh, wow, I am a really visual person. So, that's more in the terms of like a visual or a mental person. And so then once you get that thought or the vision, then you might need to bring it into your body and feel into it. So then you might need to run it through your emotional system. So say you got you're working with a client, let's say, and you got 10 thoughts come in about the next way for them to do their marketing project online. Well, for you, versus spout out those 10 best ideas, it might be good for you to filter those through your feeling system and through your body, okay? So for me, it works the other way. For someone who's a little bit more mental, a little bit more cognitive, it might be a good idea to start now turning on more of your sensations and feelings and see how that runs through your body. And so then you might be able to run those 10 ideas kind of through your filtering system and say, you know what, this one is going to be the one. Just as an example. Most of us are probably doing this in a variety of ways. We're not going to be like, first I have to get the mental thought, then I have to get the mental feeling, and then I have to write them all down, and then I have to do my pendulum. No. This is going to happen all at once. So much information, so much energy, so much possibility here. But I want you to just take a moment right now before I get too far and think, what are your top 1 to 2 ways of intuiting. Like, how does the information come in first, just immediately? Are you a feeler? Are you a thinker? Are you a visual person? Are you able to connect into other people's? Are you empathic? Do you get sensations in your body? Do you feel heat? Do you feel cold? Do you get a twitch in your ear, right? What are like the one, two, maybe you have a whole bunch of them, but what are like the top 2 ways that you're always starting to get knocks on the door from the greater consciousness telling you, hey, it's time to listen here? So you can think about those and contemplate those, and you're going to have a lot of practice in the practice sessions to do this on a more deep level. So now that you have the idea bank running, right? Those ideas open, let's all use this month to practice these. I'm going to give you meditation. I'm going to give you journal prompts. There's going to be the Facebook group. There's going to be Jessica's channeling session. And I really want to see what you guys come up with and how far you can get in developing these skills this month. So let's all be accountable and hold each other accountable in doing these practices, because it really, I can say 100 million percent with 100 million percent of my confidence that it works. And it's really, really helpful to practice these, because then it starts to go a lot quicker. Okay. So you guys have a lot of information in the previous months on the inner work portion. And I want to now elaborate on why the inner work is sometimes going to be required to be able to actually awaken the channeler within or further your process. And this is just a clear example of how our consciousness is so intelligent and brilliantly designed, because I'm giving you this month, right, tapping into your channeler, and you might start to come up against blocks and fears, and stuff might start to come up as you go through these exercises. So I want to just remind you that you have tons of information in the portal. You have me as a coach. I'm doing one-on-one sessions now. You have the tools to dig into this. So don't let it stop you. This is why I say our consciousness is brilliant, because if you do have the desire to develop these intuitive skills, because you can see the value in it, yet you have, I'm gonna tell you my example, and this will make a lot more sense, but you have something that comes up for you once you start doing these practices. This is a brilliant example of how you evolve. You go towards your fear, you go towards your discomfort, you go towards that and dig into and underneath as to why you aren't able to first tap into that. And this is going to be a big healing transformational process if you allow it to be. So I personally have, since I was a little girl, always been fascinated with intuition and channeling. And especially now as a coach, it's so much easier being able to be present and coach intuitively versus trying to remember and say the perfect thing. And I really had a hard time with this until I did my own inner work to be able to develop my own intuition and channeling. So I just wanted to put that out there, that yes, I have always had a desire. So this has actually been something that has really helped me do the inner work so that I could develop this skill. But in order to get to the place I am now, to be able to really rely more on my intuition, I had to do the inner work of becoming comfortable with feeling, with having feelings, and with having emotions, and with having those and allowing those to be in my body. So I had to actually teach myself how to first relax and be present and allow those emotions and sensations that were always coming in. So I hated it at first. And last month we did how to embrace your empathic gifts. This was really a lot of my inner work that I had to do, and I think a lot of you will be able to relate to this. But I'd always been a feeler since I was a little girl. But because it was so uncomfortable, I developed so many stories around what that meant. So I had to do a fair amount of cleaning up in this process to become comfortable with really allowing those emotions to be experienced. And then I also had to learn how to actually go further into them versus, avoiding them and pushing them away, so that I could then ask what they were telling me. They were my signaling system for everything, for my own intuition, for reading others people's energies, for making decisions. I mean, this was a huge process for me. So the process of awakening the channeler within for me has been an incredible healing process. And it will be a great guide and teacher for you as well. The more you practice and dive into the inner work, it might require to be able to open you up to your own signaling system. I always knew I had intuition, but for a long time, I really got stuck in how to improve it or develop it. I honestly thought, kind of like around the college years, that I had just maxed out on my intuitive abilities, and everyone would say, oh, you're so intuitive, because I might reflect something back to them that was, I didn't even know I was doing. But I got really fascinated with the idea of becoming better at it, almost becoming a channeler for others. But I got so confused because I didn't even recognize, this was my shadow, I didn't even recognize my resistance against my emotional guidance system, which is how I channel, which is one of my main signals, right? So even though I had the desire to stay connected to my intuition, I had to face those fears. I had to face those fears and go into those emotions and feelings. So going a little bit ahead. I think I've covered the basics here. Basically, the importance of getting familiar with your own ways of interpreting the signals and messages coming in. Being willing to do any inner work that comes up along the way. And then okay. So now we're going to talk about imagination, which is a very important component of this whole phenomenon of channeling. And I'm going to say just a direct quote from one of my teachers who was recently explaining how intuition and imagination were related, because I thought it was a great explanation. And we're just going to keep diving into this. So he says, you could say that your imagination is the energy force that you use to translate the intuition into something that you can understand. So basically, your intuition is the energy force that helps you translate. Imagination is the energy force that helps you translate your intuition. So when I think about my channeling and how I receive my information in terms of like a knowing, or when I get a vision, one of the main ways that I'm able to interpret that information is by using my imagination. It's all being filtered through the imagination, if you really think about it. And the more creative your imagination is, and the more detailed information you might be able to get from those visions, the more clear the message is going to be. So I personally think that imagination is like a lost art. We've lost touch with it because of our conditioning, because of our traumas, because of our ... But bringing it back in adulthood is really going to enhance your channeling abilities. So there are so many things you can do to help increase your imagination. And again, starting with the inner work. If you're highly traumatized, you might not even think you have an imagination. Well, that's bullshit. Everyone has an imagination. So go to the trauma work. But we can do exercises on a daily basis. You can do something creative. You can make art or make music or just go play. You can play. You can literally skip or jump rope and remind yourself that you have access to this fun imagination. You can go on a nature walk. Tap into the energy field in nature, the plants, the animals, the earth, the beauty. You can spend time doing absolutely nothing and just daydream and just see what comes up. You can use plants, you can go on psychedelic journeys. So tons of ways to exercise and inspire this imagination to come back. And the reasons why most of us aren't able to tap into our infinite imagination is because we are addicted to doing. Who's guilty? Who's guilty here? So if we can't relax, we're not going to have as much access to our imagination. That's really when we can start to develop this skill. Our bodies are stuck in the sympathetic fight or flight response. You know, we might think it's a waste of time. The list of excuses goes on. But the fact is that in order to be able to tap into the greater consciousness and gain access to the infinite everything, and if the imagination is the energy force that helps you translate the messages that you're receiving, you obviously need your imagination to be alive and well and active if you are going to really be developing this channeling ability. Our imaginations are essentially projections of our consciousness. So each of our imaginations are totally different, totally brilliant, if you will. What you're seeing with your eyes is a projection of your imagination, to get even more metaphysical and quantum on us. But when you close your eyes, or when you can start to tap into more of those 6 sensory abilities, it's your imagination that's going to allow you to translate that. So I hope that makes sense. Without our imagination, we might just be receiving a bunch of sensations and a bunch of feeling and seeing things, but without our imagination, we wouldn't know how to translate that. So it's like the bridge, if you will, between our physical world and the magical world of infinite consciousness. There's a really good book I read recently called The Art of Contemplation, and reading that book reminded me of how important it is to get still and just practice being still and opening to the infinite possibilities of the present moment. We all hear this all the time, but there's nothing more better. I know that's good. More better that you can do for your imagination than just being present. There's magic that happens when you just let your mind wander. And it's literally an infinite well of wisdom at your fingertips, and it can be accessed by simply sinking into the present moment and allowing your imagination to unfold. So again, I'm going to just stop my little notes here and give you a couple of my favorite practices of this, because I'm not asking you, unless you want to go sit and be still. There is magic in that as well, but I use things like breath work, nature walks, where I'm not talking to anyone. I go alone. I don't even go with my daughter. Actually, being with my daughter is pretty magical too, because she helps me see a lot of different perspectives on things too. But I love going on nature walks specifically with the intention to disappear from all of my preconceived notions about how I think life is and the stress and the things I have to do and blah, 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 to get lost in the energy that is in nature. So I mentioned breath work. Breath work sessions are incredible. And breath work sessions, I'm talking about more of you can do really short breath work sessions. This can happen in an instant, getting tapped into the infinite space. But as a practice, longer sessions might be a little bit better in the beginning. What else? Plant medicine ceremonies. You will only ever see in a plant medicine ceremony what your imagination is able to create, what your consciousness, it's a projection of your consciousness, just in like a really fun, colorful, brilliant, bright, exciting way. So yes, we absolutely might go in and channel one of our angels and channel the spirit of a loved one and channel our higher consciousness and channel the spirit of the plant. But if your imagination was not able to access that, if your consciousness was not open to that, it wouldn't happen. So plant medicine kind of works to help me, at least me, and others I've seen, to help us get unblocked and unstuck and out of our rigid, like, this is how it is because I've been living this way in the 3D for so long that, you know, It helps break that open. It helps gives us the experience of what else is available. And it helps really, one of the best things that you can do after a plant medicine ceremony is try and remember some of those things, not like verbatim, but like tapping into the energy of that and letting your imagination run wild. It's worked both ways for me. Plant medicine has helped increase the potency of my breathwork sessions and the ability for me to tap into the matrix and the quantum like that. And then I also go to plant medicine to even deepen that and get deeper, get more of a sense of what it feels like to be in the oneness, in the unconditional love. There's value in the human experience. We can't really exist on this plane unless you're a shaman, unless you came here with that soul mission to be in oneness all the time. That's not why we came here. We're humans. We're having a human experience. But to practice evolving in the ways that we want to evolve and to help expand our consciousness and imagination and create more of the things we want to, these are skills, these are practices, activities that you can use to help you do that. Okay, so because everyone's so different and there are so many different ways to do this, I want to give you just a couple different examples of how you can use your imagination strategically almost, and I want you to practice with some different ways this month in the meditation and in the bonus practice to learn to work with your imagination and to see what kind of information comes in when you learn to use your mind and your imagination in different ways. So, okay, let's take an example, like if you want to channel a tree. So your imagination is going to be the thing that's going to help facilitate by bringing the energy of that tree into your body so that you can understand it. So let's just take like a couple of different ways you can do that, and then you can go experiment on your own. So first, one way, this is personally the way I would do it first, is just put my hand on the tree and close my eyes, just tapping into the energy of the tree with my hands on the tree, and I would start to perceive what the energy coming from that tree is like for me. So you might feel it as heat, or you might feel it like electricity, or you might get messages, or you might get a vision, or you might get a feeling like peaceful, or all of these different things, right? So that's one way your imagination is working, is just putting your hands on the tree and allowing the energy and the information to flow in. That's why our imagination and our mind is our best friend, right? And that could come in a million different ways depending on the person and the tree. So that's one way, just to give you a little bit of context, is how you're using your imagination to channel. And it really doesn't matter which way you do it. I'm going to give you another example of how you can use your imagination. Just know, again, everyone's different. And the key is to understand how you specifically work. So no one works better than another, it's just different, but your mind is going to play a very important role in this. So it's important to get to know how your mind works, essentially, and receives the information. But let's stay with the tree example, and so I can give you a little bit of practice tools here. So another way you might use your imagination to channel the energy of this tree is do the same thing. You can put your hands on the tree, or you might just be in the presence of the tree. And you can use your mind to project an idea of how you might receive the information. So you can give your mind like a visual. So you might say, put your hands on the tree, or get in the presence of a tree, or you can even do this with a picture of a tree, for example, and put forth the idea that you're going to breathe, and you're going to maybe open your heart and imagine just the information. For example, once you breathe, you've opened your heart, imagine the energy from the tree coming in either through your hands or into your mind, into your body. And in this way, you're using your imagination projected so that you have something tangible in order to create an experience out of something that's actually untangible, right? So sometimes that can be helpful. Honestly, again, just practice with what's best for you. So what you're actually letting in either of these situations that I've just explained is really the wisdom of what you need to learn, and perhaps, hopefully, how you can apply it, depending on what you're channeling. It really doesn't matter how you do it. So experiment with the different ways. There's another super important point about channeling, and that is when you do channeling like this, when you're tapping into the energy of something or an entity or a guide, an object, your body, the information that's going to come through for you is going to come in the way that you need it and the way that you can interpret it. So if you haven't been practicing this, or if you have a lack of confidence or a lack of trust, all the more reason to start getting more in tune, more aware, more focused on these abilities. I believe that's the bird in the background channeling whatever he or she is channeling, saying hello. But this is really where trusting yourself comes into play, and it's critical to be able to trust yourself if you're going to be pulling information in and applying it to your life, right? So if you're weary and you're constantly questioning your visions and your ideas and your thoughts and your gut feelings, you aren't trusting in your channeling abilities. So just take it as a cue to learn how to trust, to drop in and to start trusting and acting on the things that are coming in. It's part of the process, and it's a really important truth to integrate, that you've got to learn how to trust yourself. So it takes time to integrate even just trust. If you're someone who hasn't trusted in yourself or trusted in God or trusted in love or trusted in people for a long time. So again, this is where this can be a really great tool to help you develop personally. And just know that everything in your imagination is actually real. You wouldn't be able to imagine it if it weren't. And that's just a fact. So this is getting into a little bit of a higher philosophical and metaphysical explanation about who and what we are and how we work here on planet Earth, but just try and begin to wrap your head around the fact that if you couldn't imagine it, it wouldn't exist. So whatever you imagine is actually real. And then you'll, give yourself time to contemplate the downloads and contemplate the intuition and figure out what the best decision for you is if you're trying to channel something. But when you trust yourself, and when you trust your channeling abilities, like really, really deeply, when you get to know this process of yourself really, really well, that's when you can become the master creator of your life, right? A rapid manifester is because you just see it and it happens, because there aren't so many parts of you in your conscious and your subconscious that are in contrast to that are doubting. So this is really how you become the super creator. It's what Esther Hicks talks about when we're tapping into the vortex and bringing all those things just waiting for us that we've imagined at one point but haven't quite trusted in or believed in or gone through the process to get them here to the 3D. But this is when that starts to happen, is when you have this deep trust in knowing that what you're seeing and imagining is real. So to begin with, I suggest starting with just one of these imagination processes, like the tree exercise that I just did. There's a bonus exercise. There's the meditation. Guided meditations are incredible for helping your imagination kind of open and play, if you will. But just practicing, and then just practicing to trust. And until you get to the point where you truly believe and just know that you can receive energetically from everything around you and everything way farther out than we can see and imagine, and that you can communicate with it, then you're going to have to practice. But as you begin to trust, you're going to be able to drop this whole process, this skeletal structure, if you will, and your greatest friend will just be who you are and what you do every day, because you'll be taking in all the information, it'll be translating, and you'll just be making decisions and be what I call in the flow. And the difference will probably be at this point that you're going to be letting your imagination do all the work for you, as opposed to you using it like we're going to be using it to practice this month. So I think there's just different levels, but it'll just kind of like come and you'll know. It'll come to you in whatever way you need to, do or act. You'll just do it without really thinking about it so much. And the number one thing that distorts your ability to channel effectively and use it to your advantage in your life is thinking that whatever you're thinking or receiving is like a mind distortion, is a lie, is something you just made up, that's totally in doubt of yourself and really in doubt of source and creation. And that's where a lot of people get stuck, as opposed to thinking that your brain and your mind are far more brilliant and on your side with the intention to help you than you realize, which is the truth. So obviously there's a stream of thoughts that can just come out of the brain, and you don't, necessarily have to take every single one seriously. And a lot of us who are on this path will have to go through a process of practicing to learn how to decipher between the thoughts that are like the old stories, or the old stories, the limited conditioning, the societal or familiar conditioning, for example. So you'll have to sometimes sort through these stories and then run them through your body, or run them through these practices, run them through a meditation to decide what is in fact more expansive for you and more powerful and more authentic moving forward. So it's all just a practice. I'm going to say this many times, but I really want you to get the gist of this, that there is no right or wrong, and it's all just a practice. And trusting that the universe always has your back and that there are no mistakes. So, that you're always being guided in the direction of love and consciousness evolution. And that might be the greatest gift in the practice of all of this, is just learning that trust, that no matter what happens in your life, no matter how painful or how joyful, it's all out of love. So the more you practice consciously doing these channeling activities, I promise that with time, all of the receiving and all of the interpretation it'll come easily, and you'll be a lot more confident in the messages you receive, in the ways that you do. So the last thing that I'm going to leave you with is I'm going to give you a little bit of information about what channeling is for and what it's not necessarily for, just to, again, get a clear perception and a clear picture of how best to use channeling. So to start it off, channeling is not so that we can navigate and control our life by getting all the answers to make things easier or less painful. Okay? So if you are looking for answers to make things, and that's not to say that things shouldn't be easier and more in the flow, but more like, I don't ever want to have to feel that sadness again, or I don't ever want to have to go through a breakup again, is kind of not the best way to look at using channeling, because it's just not the reality of life here on planet Earth. So wipe the idea from your head right now that if you get good at channeling, that everything in life will be easy peasy, butterflies and rainbows, and everything will just be handed to you on a silver platter. That very well could happen in some situations, but if you're coming from it from like a controlling aspect, like kind of demanding of the universe, or just really having expectations of everything that you ask and the answers that you receive are going to give you the easiest, least painful outcome, it's not realistic. So just know it's a false expectation and a limited perspective, really, of the human experience, because pain and failure and setbacks are a part of the process here. So when you can allow yourself to get stuck, I guess, in the realm of favoring one duality over the other, you are limiting yourself, and you will likely find it hard to trust and start to dismiss some of the messages that come in from your intuition if you're expecting always to get the easiest, less painful route. Okay, so another thing channeling is not for is getting answers to everything. A lot of things, actually, that we came here for, we came to forget, because we chose for ourselves to go through a process of remembering so that we could grow and evolve and experience the lessons in that process of remembering. So sometimes we're just not ready to get all the answers to everything. It's not to say we can't ask, so absolutely use your channeling abilities to ask certain questions and get guidance. But if we needed, just think about it. If we needed to ask our guides or a channeler to provide us with an answer about every single decision we make, that would actually create a really powerless human being. And our soul certainly does not want that for us. Your soul doesn't want that for you. So practice being more in the flow, more in your human experience, more trusting of your own, human abilities to make choices, taking risks at times, even when you think you might fail, and just really honor your humanness and having free will, because it's a process of life as well. So yes, ask questions when needed, but if you catch yourself being really dependent on needing to know all of the answers, as if you don't have access to them in your own body and energy field already. Like if you're looking at channeling like, oh, I need to ask my guides because they're outside of me. I need to ask a channeler because, I need to get confirmation about everything. This is really your cue that you're living from a story of not being enough, not feeling safe with yourself, not trusting the universe, not trusting this human process. So, not getting the answers is sometimes the exact medicine that we need. And so not getting answers, just know that that's also a really good thing sometimes, and trust in that and move forward and make choices, even if you don't have, the confidence and the answer from your guide or your higher self, or whatnot. I actually think this is a really good lesson. I've gone through all of these myself, but it's another example of how the focused intention and the conscious awareness of awakening the channeler within, how this process can begin to point out some of the inner work that is needing to be looked at, that's wanting to be looked at. So channeling can absolutely be used to help guide you in the direction of your greatest evolution. And it can absolutely help you guide others as well. So if you are using your intuition and your channeling abilities while holding space for yourself or for others, and you're not attached necessarily to the idea that it's all going to be perfect in the right way, this is a great way to use channeling. And the more you get tapped into this higher spiritual connection, the more you practice, the more relaxed you are, the more trusting you are, the more confusing it will actually become. Because you will start to get messages that actually tell you to go straight towards the uncomfortable, straight towards the unfathomable, straight towards the crazy. So that's a truth. We came here to evolve and push our limits and be essentially really uncomfortable at times. So personally, when your imagination, when your intuition, and when your own channeling abilities get this big and your thoughts get that infinite, and you feel like you're, losing your mind and taking crazy pills because of all of the infinite possibilities coming in my personal opinion, I think that's when you're making really good progress in your channeling abilities. Another good sign is that you're going to be able to see a lot of synchronicities. Again, don't have the expectation that everything is just going to turn out like you want it to, but do expect more magic, more creative ideas, more, synchronistic events, like people come into your life at the perfect time. You get answers to something when you're listening to a song and you say, oh, that was the thing that I was thinking of earlier. So expect that. And if you do listen to your intuition and things go amiss, or if they go wrong, which is, by the way, anything that goes wrong would be labeled from your own human perspective of what wrong is. So it wouldn't actually mean it's wrong. But I'm using that in the sense of like, okay, you do something and you don't get the outcome that you want. It doesn't actually mean that you've misused or misunderstood your intuition or your channeling abilities. It means that you misunderstood what the outcome was meant to be. Does that make sense? So there are no mistakes in this game. Everything has meaning, and every outcome of every decision you make is always guiding you in the direction of love. And it sometimes takes a while to use the love lens, but once you integrate that into your channeling abilities, this is when things really start to get interesting. What kept happening for me for a long time when I was trying to figure out my own intuition was that, one, I kept coming from the belief system that love was always going to feel good. So more of like a limited human definition of love versus a source definition of love. And then two, I was coming from the limited perception that my feelings were my only form of intuition and channeling. And this is really common for empaths. So now that I have a more abundant belief system of what love is, an understanding of what love is and what love can do and what, where love comes from, and when I can step out of my conditioning and see, is this truly coming from source, or is this coming from my personal belief system structure? And now that I have a more clear picture of how to listen to more of my channeling system senses than just my emotions, I've seen that I have a much wider access to the information and energy that I can channel and receive. So yeah, just like I said, many people, and especially highly empathic people, will often get confused about their feelings being their intuition and that being the only way we intuit. So a lot of people will get in the habit of, always checking in with their feelings before they actually move forward. So, thinking again that their feelings equal their intuition. It doesn't mean it's not true, because it can get really quick like that. We can just have a feeling and know that that's the next step forward. So it doesn't mean it's not true some of the time, but it's important to know that there is often way more to it than just feelings and emotions. So like I shared earlier, most of you are going to need to do some inner work to understand more about how your personal emotional signaling system works for you and how to use it. And as a reminder that all consequences lead us towards growth and lead us towards love and lead us towards light. So the process that woke me up to that limiting belief that I was holding on to and running from, kind of being in an unconscious mode of that, unconscious of that limiting belief, like that my feelings were my only form of intuiting, was through trusting my feelings at the time and following through on those, and then experiencing the consequences of my decisions based on those limited perceptions, which, as you can imagine, weren't always the most comfortable consequences. So this actually leads me to one more point I want to make, which is to remember to let go of the outcome when you act on your intuition. So trust, listen, then trust, then act, and let go of the outcome, and just remain open to the possibilities, knowing that you are following your inner guidance on some level. But again, it might not be the easiest path forward. When I started to let go of the outcomes a little bit more and not be so hard on myself and have such high expectations that every move I make would get me the best result, best, most comfortable result, when I started moving forward and trusting and letting go of the outcome, knowing ahead of time that no matter what happens, it's for my highest good and I can learn something from it. That was really a mantra I had to use with myself. But honestly, that's when I began to get more confident. I began to take more riskier moves forward, and my thinking, even my imagination, got more expansive because I wasn't as afraid and limited at that point. And my life has developed into a much greater trust than I used to have, and a much greater ability to surrender to the process and to evolve consciously. So letting go of the outcome when you do move forward with a channeled decision or an intuitive message, just know that you don't actually know if the intuition might lead you into something comfortable or comfortable, but know that it's always leading you ultimately in the direction of your highest good. So make a decision and do it with all of your energy. And if things don't turn out like you thought they would, just trust that too, because that's actually what needed to happen. Things happen so that the next thing can happen, so that the next thing can happen, so that the next thing can happen. And that's just how we grow. We learn from our perceived mistakes. We learn from things that weren't necessarily, comfortable, and so be it. So, sometimes on an even higher note, you don't even really know exactly what your soul is trying to learn or where it's trying to take you. You might have an idea of that because you're tapped in, but I believe there's always a next level. And again, that's why most of us don't have and can't have access to all of the answers about everything. Because if we knew all of the answers to everything, there would just be no fun in that, right? No, there wouldn't be a lot of growth. We came here to forget. We came here to go through this process. So it's flexible. It's, you got to be bendable. You got to remind yourself to chill out every once in a while and trust and surrender to the discomfort and so on and so forth. So this brings me to the end of the workshop. Thank you for staying with me for this whole time. I'm going to do a quick summary of what we covered today so that you can then move on to the meditation, work through the journal prompts, and begin your own personal process and exploration of awakening the channeler within in your own life this month. So the first thing that we did was we defined channeling as being the process of revealing anything and everything that is not limited by your own conditioning or this third dimension or your basic five senses. So essentially, channeling gives you access to everything in the universe. I said the first step of awakening the channeler within is getting in tune with how you personally perceive and receive information from the field of consciousness. The second part of awakening the channeler within then becomes about interpreting this information and using different practices based on all the ways in which you receive it to interpret the messages that are coming in. I talked about your imagination being essential in this process, as it's the energy force that you use to translate the intuition and the messages coming in into something that you can understand and put into practice. I talked about how trusting yourself is critical in order to be able to pull information in and apply it to your life in a way that you can actually use it to assist you in your evolutionary process here on planet Earth. I debunked a couple of common misperceptions of how to use channeling, and then shared more about trust and moving forward with your confidence, because it really builds trust and letting go of the outcome when you can let go of the outcome and just follow your intuition and go forward and learn from your mistakes as well. So now it's time to jump into the meditation, the journaling prompts, the bonus practice I've left you at the end of this lesson for this month. It's all under this video. I would love it if you could share about things that are happening for you this month. You can share those in the Facebook group. You can share those in the portal, in the comments below this. And thanks again so much for watching, and I will see you in the meditation.